Hello, everybody, and welcome to our Your Kids Next Read author talk with the fantastic Jacqueline Harvey. I'm sincerely hoping that some of you can actually see us right now. Otherwise, we're going to be talking just to ourselves, which is fine. If you are there, please say hello. That would be lovely. Now, just a quick reminder that we're using StreamYard to do our broadcast tonight. So if you want to comment, we would love to know who you are. And for us to know who you are, you need to actually click on to the StreamYard link, which is above the post if you are on the desktop or watching us on a computer or something. If you're on a phone, I'm hoping that Megan or Alison will pop in any minute now and pop the link in the comments for you. But if you don't, hi, Grace and Ivy, how are you? If you don't click on that StreamYard link, I can't actually see who you are commenting. So please do that if you can. Now, as I said, you are at the Your Kids Next Read author talk with the fabulous Jacqueline Harvey. We're very excited to have you here with us tonight. We've got lots and lots of questions for Jacqueline that have been pre-submitted, and we have some prizes to give away because of that. But first of all, let's just have a little bit of a chat about who we're actually speaking with tonight. Jacqueline Harvey is the author of the popular Alice Miranda, and I know how popular these are in our group, by the way, popular Alice Miranda, Clementine Rose, and Kenzie and Max series, which have sold well over 1 million copies in Australia alone. She left a 20-year career in schools as a teacher. She was also a deputy head of junior school and director of development to become a full-time writer, so she knows what kids want. Highlighted by the fact that she has won Children's Choice Awards for several of her books and been shortlisted countless times for different awards. The sixth book in the Kenzie and Max series, Full Speed, is out now. Perhaps Jacqueline would like to hold that up for us.
So I can hold that up.
Yes. She's a barrel girl. And I don't even need to say welcome to the Your Kids Next Read group because Jacqueline is an enthusiastic member and a very, very helpful and valuable member of the group as it is. But welcome to your very own Your Kids Next Read author talk, Jacqueline Harvey.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Alison. It's wonderful to be here.
So it's weird that we're still here in November talking to each other in our studies instead of where we would like to be, which is, in front of a room full of people having a glass of wine and a good old chat. But here we are, and you have a new book out, Kenzie and Max Full Speed. So why don't you start by telling us a little bit about the new book? What are our intrepid heroes up to this time?
Well, in this book, the kids are, it actually starts really, it's a really super exciting start in this one. So they're on a school excursion to the Houses of Parliament in London, and there's a fairly scary attack on the Houses of Parliament while they're in there. So as in, there's a bit of gas sort of billowing into the House of Commons when the children are in the gallery upstairs. And the kids see that and think, wow, what's going on? And then some of the politicians start sort of falling to the floor like flies. And so it's up to the kids to, they quickly exit the room and realize that they're all locked in. And so it's got a very exciting start. I will, allay anybody's fears. Nobody dies. It's, it's all fine. But it's got a very, spoiler alert, yeah. So anyway, it starts in that way. And then the children actually go off on what they think is a completely unrelated mission to, they end up in Switzerland in a place called Zermatt. And you can see on the front cover of the book, perhaps, it's hard to see because it's got such a shiny cover. There's the Matterhorn Mountain is on the front cover. And so they end up in this village and they're really sent there on a mission by their grandmother, Cordelia Spencer, who is the head of Pharos, the spy organisation that they're part of. And they're sent on a mission to look at to watch a family called the Van Leers. And Fox and Heike Van Leer, they've made an extraordinary amount of money in a very short space of time. And they seem to have no, there's not really any reason why they should have made all this money. And there's a whole lot of, I guess they're wondering, what is it that they're up to? And the kids are really sent to befriend Heike and Fox Van Leer's son, Soren. And so it's about intelligence and getting the background information. And anyway, it ends up in a very full speed, action-packed a couple of chases. There's an opportunity for the kids to show off their skiing and snowboarding prowess, which they have in spades because they've grown up on ski fields all around the world. And in the end, perhaps there was a fireman in the Houses of Parliament that Max had a sort of strange look exchange with, and he turns up in Zermatt. So everything is linked in the end. So lots of fun.
A very action-packed story. So when you're writing something like this, are you just thinking like all the time, like what's going to happen next? What's going to happen next? What's going to happen next?
Yeah, look, I mean, this one, I sort of had this all worked out to a point, and then the end of it was quite hard to bring together. And I think my poor publisher, Holly, I must have, called her and chewed her ear off for about an hour saying, I just don't know what to do with the ending. I can't bring it together. And I really then... my strategy was that I actually I have huge Post-it notes, and I plaster them all over my windows, and I basically wrote all the big ideas and the big points of the story. And then I had about 50 questions, how do you bring this together, and how do you make this line up, and how is this bad guy going to come unstuck? And I think for me it was the case that I really needed a bit of time just to kind of sit back and go, wow, this is really complicated. And I didn't want it to run 10,000 words over, because then, as you know, Alison, you have to then shave 10,000 words off if you go too far. So it was very much the sort of action-packed. And the end of it, I absolutely loved the ending of it, because it's also there's a few revelations there that I think kids have actually written to me and said, oh, I didn't expect that. So that's always a good thing.
So I guess, when you sort of started thinking about Kenzie and Max, as book one back in the day, did you have to kind of think about 6 books ahead as to where the series might go? Like, did you know there was going to be snowmobiles in Switzerland in book 6 at that point?
No. I kind of had, I had this idea of when building the world, I had that Pharos was the world's most ancient and important spy organization, not linked to any governments, sort of above any sort of corruption, if you like, and that it had started in the ancient lighthouse called Pharos in Alexandria in ancient Egypt, and that there was this sort of long lineage, and there was like a charter of how things operated. So I spent a lot of time thinking about that background, and even down to the fact that the newspaper that the grandmother runs is called The Beacon, and the Beacon is a light in a lighthouse. Her property, her big fancy property in North Yorkshire, is called Alexandria. And it's been interesting because a few kids have actually put this together, and I thought, wow, that's pretty impressive to to get that. But in terms of an overarching storyline, I always sort of thought there would be a couple of overarching storylines where, like, there's one recurring baddie called Dash Chalmers. It looks like we've gotten rid of him, but maybe we haven't. And also there's somebody after the kids. There's somebody else who's after the kids. And it's funny, I was talking to my publisher yesterday because I'm working on book number 7 at the moment, and I was talking about, I'd had this revelation that the baddie that I had thought probably for the last 3 books who was going to be the ultimate baddie, it's not the person that's going to be the ultimate baddie. So
love that. That's a great kind of a revelation to have. Now, just want a reminder to everyone that if you we'd love to see your comments. Please say hello to us. Let us know that you're there, and don't forget to click on the StreamYard link just so that we can see who you are. You can ask questions as the talk unfolds. We've got some questions that I'm going to get to in a little while as well, but we would absolutely love to know that you're there. If you just want to send Jacqueline a little fan mail, I'm sure she'd be thrilled to see that as well. We love a bit of fan mail, don't we?
We do.
Now, what do you love most about writing Kenzie and Max? Like, what is it about this series? Because it is such a, romp, isn't it? Such a spy, adventure, thriller kind of thing. Like, what is the best bit about writing it?
I think I really love the baddies. I really love making up the bad guys and sort of getting to do stuff that you would never do in real life. As much as I would like to think that I could be, an expert at parkour. I'm not. If I tried to run along the wall outside my study at the moment, I would probably fall off and break my neck. But it's nice to have my characters with skills that I suppose I imagined my younger self maybe having, but my older self now just admires the fact that these kids are quite incredible. I love the physicality of it. I do love, writing. I write quite a lot of fight scenes in it, which is fun. And I enjoy I guess the cleverness of the children in it too. The fact that they're really good at codes, and they're really good at working out maps. And there's a lot of skills in there. They've in the book I'm writing at the moment, they've just won the British STEM Championships. So in a team. So there's that scientific aspect, which is probably not my great strength, science, but I've really enjoyed exploring aspects of that. Kenzie's great at building little machines and little remote controlled gadgets. And so I've had to do quite a lot of research on that. So that's been fun. But I love, I guess what I love too, it's got a really great family dynamic. So Kenzie and Max, they're twins. They're 11 when we first meet them. They love each other, except when they don't. They're typical brother and sister. But I love that they always have each other's backs. So they get on extremely well most of the time. But they've also now that they're not sort of living in this really tight-knit family unit that just moved around the world to different ski resorts with mum and dad and Fitz, their Manny, who is they always thought was their dad's best friend, but is actually their father's first cousin, because basically for the first 11 years of their life they were in sort of spy witness protection, if you like. And now they've got this bigger family unit. And one of the characters, I adore their grandmother Cordelia, but she's quite stern and she's quite proper. Though I love that she is Australian and she, runs a big British newspaper. But one of my favourite characters is her butler, whose name is Song. And Song is very funny. He, I always say to kids, how do you imagine a butler to behave? And they're like, very properly and, probably bows a bit and probably, very neat and very trim and tidy and all the rest of it. And Song is all of those things, but he also loves country music. And when he does the housework, he's often line dancing with the duster, and he does a lot of things that are quite surprising to the children. But he's also, he's an older chap, and he is incredibly fit, and he teaches them, mixed martial arts, and he teaches them all sorts of things. So yeah, it's really got a fun family dynamic. And also the parents were missing for the first 3 books, so I got a chance to really explore Kenzie and Max's relationship for a while. When mum and dad came back, that was interesting too, because I had to then sort of add them back into the group and see, how do Kenzie and Max get on with their parents. And, Anna, their mother, she's really anti being part of Pharos again. She doesn't want to be in the spy organisation, and she's an orthopaedic surgeon. She's got other stuff to do. She happened upon this because she married Ed, and he's he's part of this. And so, yeah, that's been fun.
I'm listening to you talking about these people, and it's like you are talking about your, the people in the next room, your cousins, yep. Which of course is what, characters do become like that. I just want to have a little hello to Madeline. Hi, Madeline, aged 8, who loves your books. Having written girl characters for so long, because of course, Alice, Miranda and Clementine Rosa are beloved across different age groups. Did you find writing Max posed any challenges for you when you first began?
Not really, because I have 2 nephews who I'm very close to, and I think at the time I started writing Kenzie and Max, my eldest nephew Darcy was probably 10 or 11, and Flynn's just a year younger. And so even when I was coming up with what Max should look like, I actually gave my illustrator photographs of both the boys, and I said, just make Max look like a combination of these two, as if she could have put them together. So I guess in a way, I thought about how the boys reacted to things at times, and how, I see the boys interact. And also when I was teaching, even though I taught in a girls' school for the last 10 years of my career, the first 10 years I taught in a co-ed school, and I had really fabulous, I loved working with the boys. They were great fun. So, and also now when I'm out and about in schools, I get to go to schools with boys, of course. And it's always interesting just to observe the kids. So he didn't pose not a huge problem. And also, I guess, too, because in Alice Miranda, we have Lucas, who is Alice Miranda's cousin, who she adores. We also have lots of boys in Clementine Rose. So I have been writing boy characters, but just not as the lead necessarily for a long time. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Now we're going to go to our pre-submitted questions in a moment, because there have been quite a few. But first of all, I did promise that you would choose your two favourites to win a copy each of Kenzie and Max Full Speed. There it is. This is what you win. And we have chosen those, or Jacqueline has chosen those winners. Now, the first winner is the question was sent by her mother, Alison Walsh, but Amelia, aged 5, has sent this message, this question: which of all your characters was your absolute favourite to dream up?
Oh, and you know what? The answer to that is really hard, because it's a bit like being a parent. And, when people would never ask a parent, which one is your favorite child? That's just it's not the done thing. And so I suppose I think about my characters as, they are like my children. I feel like really I love them. I love them all. I love them all for different reasons. But I suppose the character that I can answer it in a different way, that the character who has changed my life is Alice Miranda. And so, Alice Miranda really was drawn in the beginning from 3 little girls that I taught. She sort of was this conglomeration, if you like, of these characteristics of 3 girls. And then over time, she really became the best parts of lots of children that I've worked with over the years. And so I guess, Alice Miranda is the one who, by having her books and the success that she had enabled me to change my life and become a full-time writer. So, so I think it would be Alice Miranda.
Okay, excellent answer, and a great question, Julia. So you will be receiving a copy of Kenzie and Max Full Speed. And then our second winner is Nabila Wahid, who with her daughters has actually sent 3 questions. And we've got 2 here, and I've saved one for the end, but we'll do these 2 while we're here. Nabila wants to know, what is the most difficult part of your artistic process?
Oh, and that is a really good question. That's a tough one, because I suppose I'm not usually lost for an idea. So ideas aren't the hard bit. It's then taming the ideas into a story, shaping those ideas that you have and working out, well, how is this big idea going to actually become a story or a book? So, I don't know. I think, I like the planning stage. I like the writing stage. I think actually on top of the, how you're going to tame the ideas into a story, there's that middle bit of a book, which I know Alison, well, as well, that you kind of get to the middle and sometimes you just feel like you just want to get to the end. And so there's that middle that presents.
Get through the middle. Swim through the middle.
You've got to get through that, swim through the middle bit. And I think sometimes the middle is the hardest. I like the editing. I love editing.
You love editing?
Yeah.
That makes you a very unusual writer. Oh, and she's frozen.
Sorry, Al, I think I lost you for a second there, but sorry, can you say that? I'm back.
I said you love writing. You love editing, which makes you an unusual writer.
Oh, we're a bit frozen for a second.
Yes, can you hear me now?
Hang on 1 second. I'm just going to do something.
Oh, she's going to do something. This could be disastrous.
Yeah, no, I do love editing. I can hear now. Can you hear me?
Oh, good. Don't move, okay? You now have to sit in one position and not move.
I'm actually just going to open the door to the study because I think that might be affecting. Okay, I'm not moving.
Don't move.
I'm not moving.
Oh, right there.
No, I'm not moving. I was just going to open the study door because the Wi-Fi extender is outside. So I'm trying to think whether maybe the Wi-Fi is being a bit painful. I will be 2 seconds. Truly, 2 seconds.
Talk amongst yourselves for a moment while she opens the door, people.
I've just opened the door. And I'm back.
Hey, she's back.
And
Hello.
I'm back.
Yeah,
And
that's
I'm
better.
back.
Yeah,
I just oh, well, I think perhaps I've shut out the Wi-Fi, so that's not good.
Not ideal. All right. So the second part of Nabila's question. The second part of Nabila's question. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? You have no volume. Okay. Kenzie and Max will fix it.
Yes.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah. Are we back?
She's going to be back again. All right. Sorry, everyone. Talk amongst yourselves once
now.
more. Okay. Don't move. Can you still hear me? Hello.
Hang on. I'm back, but I don't know why you're not back.
I'm back. Can you hear me now?
I'm back. Yes.
Okay, great. Don't move. Oh, now you're gone. There's no picture. Oh, dear.
I'll be back now.
Oh, there you are. Hello. Can we hear?
Am I back
guys,
now?
Can you hear us out there? Al
No.
Rushby, can you wait and let us know that you can hear us, please?
Oh, why is this being painful? I haven't touched anything.
Jackie, I can see and hear you.
I can hear you, and I can hear you.
All right. If you can hear me, we'll just keep talking because we can see you and hear you. So some people can hear me and some people can't hear you. There's a bit of a delay.
Are we back?
Alison, you can hear me. I think you're back.
What's going on? Come on.
Can you guys hear Jacqueline? Okay, Adrian Beck is suggesting that you log in again via the 4G on your mobile. Get off the Wi-Fi and try that. Sorry about this, everybody. Technical dramas.
Yeah. Technical dramas. I'm back. I'm here. I can see you. I can hear you.
Okay. Shall we continue? So some people can hear us both.
Hopefully
the whole
we'll be fine.
Yeah. All right,
okay.
Great. Okay. So the second, I just want to ask you the second part of Nabila's question, which was what comes first for you, the plot or the characters, and why?
Okay, so the characters, I think, so because I've written a whole lot of series, the characters have generally come first. So Alice Miranda came first, Clementine Rose came first, and yeah, Kenzie and Max came first too. So for me, it was the characters that were the thing that I thought about first, but I also had the idea of where would I put them. So for Alice Miranda, it was at school. Clementine Rose, the idea that she was going to live, she needed to live somewhere where she would have a lot of freedom. And so she ends up living in a hotel. And so that's a great place to give your 5-year-old child a lot of freedom because mum's busy with the hotel guests. And so, and then Kenzie and Max, obviously, I had this idea of a spy series. I wasn't quite sure where I was going to put them, but definitely the idea that they would be, part of this bigger organization was always there, but I had to work out, where it would be.
Great. All right. So Nabila also wins, obviously, a copy of Kenzie and Max Full Speed. So we have one more copy to give away. And it's we're going to give it away during the event now. If you would like the opportunity to leave in the copy to win this book, this fabulous new book. All you have to do is tell us in the comments where you are watching from and whether you have been doing anything at full speed today. So where are you watching from, and have you been doing anything at full speed today? Some of us may have been scrolling Twitter at full speed today, but that's not ideal. Anyway,
No.
so, while that sort of unfolds and while people give us their answers to that, let us go forward with the questions that have been pre-submitted to us. I just want to pop this one up before we do that, though. I'm just looking for Adrian Beck, of course, fellow middle grade author Adrian Beck, has a question for you. Hello, Jacqueline. I love Kenzie and Max. Are you building up to a big finish like a true plotter, or is it the type of series that could continue forever?
Well, Adrian, that's a very good question, because I originally had thought that I was only going to do 8 of them. So I kind of had this big finish planned for number 8. However, I've now signed on for number 9 and 10. So if I'm going to have the big finish, it's going to have to happen in book 10. And really at the moment, I do have an idea of how we're going to really shock readers in number 10 with this, quite astonishing revelations about a couple of characters. So I do have the idea that it might be a big finish, but I guess I've got to decide. I did say to Holly, my publisher, the other day, I said, but what about if we sign number 11 and 12? Then what do? I'm going to have a different big finish.
You're in big trouble. You are in big trouble. Hello to Tamar, who is in Australia and learning at school full speed. And we also have another visitor who's watching from Wollongbar and was at school all day, probably at full speed. So there we go. All right, so let's go to our pre-submitted questions. So Stacey Elliott, Grace has sent us a question from Grace, who is 9. And Grace would like to know, when you wrote the first Alice Miranda book, did you plan to write just one?
I planned to write a picture book. That's what I was planning. Oh. I planned that Alice Miranda was going to be one picture book. I thought, this is a really sweet little idea about this little girl who goes to boarding school. Yeah, I'll just write a picture book. And then as soon as I started it, I thought, no, this kid has a lot more to say than just, a 32-page picture book. So, no, in the beginning, I really thought that it would be short, and I had no concept that it would be, next year will be the 20th book in the series. So I had no idea that would happen to start with. However, when I started then writing the novel, I realised that it had potential to be a much bigger series.
Excellent. All right. So Tamar has sent through a story, a question from Sarah, age 10, or could be Sarah. Sorry if I got that wrong. I loved Alice Miranda in the Outback. Please, will you write another Alice Miranda set somewhere in Australia? Come on. The South Coast.
Yeah.
Alice Miranda would love it. Jervis Bay.
Yep. Oh, look, I think there's so many places Alice Miranda could visit in Australia. I'm not sure, though, where she will go next for her 20th adventure. I have thought perhaps New Zealand is a good place to go, because let's face it, that's probably the only place we'll be travelling for the next 12 months if we're allowed out of the country. That's true. Yeah, I have had suggestions from lots of kids about, Alice Miranda on the Great Barrier Reef, or Alice Miranda, exploring various parts of the country. I could happily take her to Adelaide. I went to Adelaide. I actually got on a plane and went to Adelaide last Thursday. So that was very exciting.
That is exciting. That's a big trip these days.
It is.
Alicia Hartley has asked, what age group do you recommend Kenzie and Max for? My 8-year-old has loved Clementine Rose so much and Alice Miranda and would love to start another Jacqueline Harvey series. I mean, why not? But I don't want her to read them if she's too young for the content.
Okay, well, Kenzie and Max, I think, is probably, I think we've sort of said it's 9+, but it also depends on the maturity of your reader. So, if I know that there are lots of kids who are a bit younger that are reading it. I guess it's probably a little bit scarier than Alice Miranda and Clemmy, in that, we do have some quite nasty bad guys at times, but it's not terrible, and super bad things don't happen. The kids, in my stories that kids will always come out on top. And, if the baddies deserve to get their comeuppance, they will get their comeuppance. But, I think probably 9+, I would say.
Okay, great. All right, so Liz Spur has sent a question from Elliott, who's aged 9. This is a great question. How do you come up with the settings in Kenzie and Max? How do you decide where they're going?
I often they're places that I've been, and so I've places that I've visited that I've really loved, and sometimes when I'm writing the story though in a certain location. So, for example, the second book was set in Rome, or set in England, and then it was set in Rome. I haven't been to Rome for a long time. I think I visited Rome in about 2007, so it was a long time ago. And so what I do when if I haven't been to a place for a long time, or even if I have been there and, I need to remember, for the children out there who are aspiring writers, Google Maps and Street View are your best friend. So I was taking myself literally on walks around Rome, all around Rome, and looking at details that I had forgotten. And I was just saying to a group of children today that one of the things Rome is, I sort of forgotten, they have the most beautiful door knockers on these extraordinary doors. Yeah, and so I made note of all these, these fabulous door knockers. In terms of where they go, they went to Zermatt, and I've been to Zermatt, and it's a fabulous little village because there's no cars in Zermatt. It's they've got these funny little electric buggies, but otherwise it's just horse and cart or sleighs, depending on the season. So it's just so pretty, and the Matterhorn is a very majestic mountain. They've been to Rome, they've been to Sydney, they've been in London, New York, and the the book that I'm writing now, I wanted an absolute contrast from the snow. So I had to go somewhere that was really a very different environment.
Excellent. All right. I think we've got a delay.
Oh dear, you're back.
Oh, no. You're back. Sorry.
I think we did, but yeah. So they're off to steamy Singapore.
Excellent. Okay. Colleen Dancer has sent a question from Emily, who's age 12, and her question was, is this the last Kenzie and Max book? But I think you've already left that cat is out of the bag, and there will be more. And we have a very excited 9-year-old who has learned that there will be 10 Kenzie and Max books at least. So that's a good bit of news we've been able to impart here tonight. Leanne Mayer has sent through a question from Jess, aged 11. How do you decide on who your characters are going to be, and how do you go about choosing their names?
Well, I suppose who the characters are, I kind of have to decide, well, after I've got my main characters, my Kenzie and Max, well, who's their family? So, I had to come up with mum and dad, and, would they have any of the other siblings? No. They have a Manny, so not a nanny, but a Manny. And, I decided, what Fitz was like. I often imagine the stories as movies. And so I think about who would play these roles in my ideal movie of Kenzie and Max. So that's a good way to sort of think about what the characters might look like. But as for the names, I spend a lot of time on baby name websites. I spend a lot of time I guess, so for example, in this book, there's a couple of interesting characters called Fox and Heike van Leer. And yes. Fox and Heike van Leer are German, and they kind of they're quite objectionable. And I spent a lot of time looking for the perfect names for them. I looked in the German online phone book, what are popular German surnames. And so, I spend a lot of time. I also collect Post-it notes at signings, and if there's a particularly interesting name from a child that I meet, I think, maybe that could work for a character at some point.
Some of these people might end up in books one day. How exciting!
Well, they could, and in fact, one of the characters in Kenzie and Max, there's a character called Curtis Pepper, and I actually know a real boy with that name, and I had to ask his permission. Could I use his wonderful name in a story? So there you go.
He said yes. Okay, so now we've got some questions about writing. Monica has sent a question from Madeline, aged 8. And Madeline wants to know how long it takes you to write a book.
Well, it varies. It doesn't vary that much anymore, but it did vary a lot in the beginning. So when I first wrote Alice Miranda, the first long version of Alice Miranda, I probably took about 2.5 years to write the story, because I had no contracts. I didn't know whether anybody would ever read it. And I thought, I just want to spend a lot of time writing a book that I would have wanted to read if I was, 9 or 10 or 11 years old, or, however. So to begin with, it was no pressure. Whereas when I I sort of felt like I had a lot of time on my hands to start with, but then once I started getting contracted, then the books were much faster to write. So I actually was writing really quickly, and I was writing an Alice Miranda book in pretty much 3 months, I guess. However, sorry, I'm not sure if I can.
Oh, she disappeared again. Talk amongst yourselves for a moment, people.
Am I back?
I can hear you again.
Oh dear.
There you go.
This connection is not good.
It's not good.
Am
but
I back?
This is yes, you are. You're back. And in these trying times, we do the best we can, right?
Okay. Well, I'm just going to keep talking. So I kept talking before. So I'm back. All right. Yeah, we do. I'm sorry. I don't know why it's playing up so badly. Obviously in Pimble we just have bad internet for some reason. So but yeah, I was just saying though, I write the books much faster now, obviously because I have pressure and deadlines. And so this is a prime example. I wrote this book in 6 weeks over the summer. I set myself a deadline or a goal of writing 10,000 words a week for 6 weeks, and managed to get that done. So, but then it's not just 6 weeks of writing; it's then lots of editing and lots of other bits and pieces that come with it as well. So, it varies. So, Kenzie and Max roughly takes me about, I guess, two months to write the story, and then there's all the editing that goes with it. So. But because I'm bringing them out every 6 months, there is quite tight deadlines.
And do you just work on, we have a question from within the group now, and also Madeline's, the second part of her question is, do you just write one book at a time? You don't work on two, you're not working on 2 projects at once?
Sometimes I am, and that's really hard. So, so I tell you what, when I was writing Clementine Rose, when I was really full on into Clemmy, I could write a Clementine Rose and be editing an Alice Miranda at the same time.
Wow.
But I can't be writing an Alice Miranda. Actually, no, it might have been the other way around, I think. I could write Alice Miranda and edit Clemmy, but not the other way around. So it just depended, how much headspace it involved. But I do prefer now, and I particularly am trying to do this, to only work on one thing at a time.
Okay, that makes sense. So Ivy has... Mackenzie, who is 7 years old, Julie Howard has sent her question. She also asked how long it takes to write a book. So we've answered that bit. Mm-hmm. But she wants to know how you come up with the stories. So I guess it's that thing of you've got your character of Alice Miranda. How do you decide what's going to happen in that particular story?
Okay, so I can give you an example from Alice Miranda in the Outback. I'd always wanted to write an Outback story, and I have been fortunate to visit parts of Australia in the Outback. So I've been to the desert in Western Australia. I've been to Alice Springs. I hadn't been to Coober Pedy, which is where I partly set this book. So I needed to do a lot of research about Coober Pedy. And even though they were only sort of passing through for a couple of days in Coober Pedy, it was still quite pivotal to the story. And then I thought, well, what's a problem that somebody who lives in the Outback could have that's a big, big problem? And so Alice Miranda's father is friends with a guy called Barnaby Lewis, and he lives on a huge cattle station called Hope Springs. And the problem that he's having is that his bore water is all drying up. It's disappearing. The water is gone. And this water is part of the, the artesian basin. And so it shouldn't be gone. And so he's sort of thinking, well, you know, how is my bores must be broken down. There must be some sort of big problem. So the idea of water theft came into my head, and I started doing a bit of research about people who actually steal water from farms and from, you know, divert water, raise the water table, lower the water table. So that's how that came about. I just thought, you know, big problem in the outback, what could it be? Also, there's because it's set near Coober Pedy and we've got opal mining, there was the idea of, you know, perhaps there could be an opal reef somewhere else that nobody had ever found. And then of course, you know, somebody going missing is always a good that's always a good plot line if somebody's somebody goes missing. And in fact, in this book, a little girl goes missing from the farm next door, and I guess the heightened issue there was that she's deaf, and so she couldn't hear the helicopters, and she couldn't hear the people who were trying to rescue her. So so every story is very, very different, you know. You know, they're good. The ideas come, a lot of the time it comes from, I think about the location, and then I think, well, what can happen while I'm there?
And then you just make it really hard for everyone, right? You make them have very bad days.
I do. So many problems for everybody.
So Ivy, who's age 6, wants to know, did you always want to write books?
I always loved the idea of writing books, but I never met any authors when I was growing up, so I didn't know how to do it. I really thought that authors lived in cottages in the woods in England somewhere. I had no concept that authors could be people like me in Australia. And I decided at a very young age I wanted to be a teacher, but I was always telling stories, and so telling stories really helped me to then write a lot of stories for the kids in my classes. And then after a while, I would say all the time that I wanted to try and write books for kids. And my husband said to me one day, you know, he said, you talk about this all the time. Are you ever actually going to do anything about it? And I thought, well, that's a very good question. And he said, well, you know, you might as well give it a go. And I thought, you know what, I'm not going to die wondering. And so that's when I gave it a go. So
fantastic. Ivy also wants to know, if you could have any job in the world, what would you be? Any job?
Oh, I think I'd do any job in the world. I think I'm a bit of a frustrated actress. I read audiobooks now for, you know, I read my books as audiobooks, so I love doing voice work. That's a great job. So maybe, I don't know, maybe on the radio, or maybe on television. You know, I used to want to be a newsreader for a while as well. But in many ways, I have, yes, that's right. But in many ways, I have kind of the ideal job, because I've got to do quite a lot of stuff on TV, and I get to read audiobooks, and I get to perform in front of kids all the time and make a complete fool of myself. So in many ways, I kind of am an actress now, and I also get to make up lots and lots of stories, and that's the best bit. So I think I'm very fortunate to be living the dream.
Very much so. So Charlotte, who's 8, wants to know, which Alice Miranda book is your favourite?
Oh, I don't like to say that I have a favourite book, but I have to say the one that I enjoyed writing the most was this one. So Alice Miranda in the Outback. I don't know why. The characters just all kind of really sang for me. You know, I love the Australian characters, and you know, there's a crazy miner in this book called Sprocket McGinty, and he isn't afraid of anything, not snakes, not spiders, not even dynamite. And years ago, when I was in the Outback in Western Australia, I met this real life crazy miner called Harvey, and he wasn't afraid of snakes or spiders or dynamite either. And so I finally got to write him in a book. He also wasn't afraid of mercury, which was quite concerning to me at the time. So yeah, I love the characters in that story.
Imogen, who's also 8, wants to know, will you continue to write Alice Miranda books?
Well, I'm writing Alice Miranda up to number 20. So next year is number 20. And then I think I'm going to take a little break from Alice Miranda because, well, I can tell you this now because it's all contracted. I have a new series coming. It won't be until 2022. Yeah, 2022. This is an exclusive for you guys. But I'm really excited about that series, and I've signed 4 books in that so far. So I think what I'll do is, and I've also signed a couple of picture books, which will be really good fun to do. And yeah, so I'm thinking that Alice Miranda, I don't want her to be over, but I just probably need a little rest, because if I'm going to write Kenzie and Max, and I'm going to write the new series, and I've got a picture book or 2, then you know, I need some time. Just need some time.
I think you've got enough on your plate, frankly.
Oh, this internet and pinball is a disaster.
Esme, who's 9, so you might have just covered this, but how old were you when you realised you wanted to be an author?
Oh, look, I think as a child I would have, you know, I entertained thoughts what a great job that would be, but I don't think I realised that it was really even a possibility until I was working as a teacher. So I would say even while I was in my teens and I thought it would be lovely to be a writer, and I actually won a competition when I was a teenager, which made me think, oh, you know, perhaps I have some degree of ability to write a story. It wasn't until really, you know, in my 20s, I thought, oh, you know, this would be an ideal job. I think we had some authors come to visit my school, and I thought, I want their job. So.
Yes. Author visits, the author talk, it's essential, right?
It is.
Now, Alina, who's 12, wants to know, what are the most important, predominant, supreme, significant, awesome, useful, functional, and convenient tips you could lend to the 12-year-old whose dream is to become a writer?
Okay, well, you've got to be observant. You need to take note of the world around you, and you need to be able to, you know, think about descriptions of things. Don't just, when you write too, don't just write what you see, write what you smell and what you taste and what you hear and what you feel and how you feel. All of those things are really important when you write. Don't use too much description. I know that a lot of the time in schools, teachers will say, oh, use as many adjectives as you can in a sentence. Please don't. You know, what you don't want to do is overwrite a story. So you want to, you know, you want to have the best description, not the most flowery description. I would say for a 12-year-old, plan your stories so that you know, you kind of know who's in it, how it's going to start, what are the big ideas in your story, and most importantly, what are you aiming for as an end? Because I get a lot of kids and they tell me how they started a story and it was amazing and it was the best thing I was ever going to write. And then halfway through, they get really sick of it because they don't know how to end it. And then they resort to really, they don't know. They're not swimming. They're not swimming in the middle. And they'll do endings like, I woke up and it was all just a terrible dream, you know, and we all hate that ending. Yeah, very bad. So, you know, don't do those endings. And I think so. Plan, observe, you know, be an observer, write stuff down, take lots of photographs. I do that all the time. I'm always going back to referring to photographs to think about, oh, that's what that looks like, or, you know, I was in that particular place. Research is your friend as well. So there's a bazillion tips I can tell you.
There are so many, aren't there? Michelle wants to know, will Alice Miranda go to university?
Hello, Michelle.
Hello, Michelle.
I can see who you are, Michelle. Oh, look, you know, it's funny because now that Alice Miranda's been out for 10 years, you think there are kids who started reading Alice Miranda at sort of 7 or 8, and they're now 17 and 18. And I have so many requests from the older readers who still love her and still run out and buy the books when they come out. And they have said, you know, can you make her a grown-up? Can we have the grown-up version of Alice Miranda? So I don't know. It might be fun to do a couple.
There's someone watching us who says, my 15-year-old is having a fangirl moment watching this with me, laugh out loud. She grew up reading Alice Miranda in primary school and loved it. So there you are. They're sticking with you all the way.
They are sticking with me. So, yeah, there might be a market for, you know, Alice Miranda in her early 20s off to university and to save the world somehow.
Alice Miranda, I can see it. I love it.
Yeah.
Now, we're going to switch to some questions about reading because, of course, this is the Your Kids Next Read group, etc. Amanda Eve would like to know what books you loved as a child. And this is from an adult who devoured mysteries, detective stories, and books about boarding schools.
Oh, there you go. Well, I also loved the Hardy Boys and Nancy Drew and Trixie Belden. In fact, when I was growing up, Trixie Belden was available in our local Coles supermarket because it was kind of like one of those Coles variety stores. Yeah. And I used to save my pocket money every week to go and buy a new Trixie Belden book. And my mother would let me spend my pocket money on Trixie Belden, but she wouldn't let me spend it on chocolate. I also loved, my favourite book when I was a little girl was Heidi. And I suppose that might be some reason why I'm a bit sort of fascinated with Switzerland. I can remember the first time that we went to Switzerland, and I was on a train in the Swiss Alps, and I was pressing my face against the window like this, and I was saying to my husband, "It's just like Heidi," and he was thinking, "No, what are you going on about?" What else did I love? I loved Black Beauty because I was a mad horsey girl as a child as well. I also loved Paddington Bear. I was a really big Paddington Bear fan. I was also one of those kids though who just read anything that was in the library. So I remember one of my younger sisters was mad for Anne of Green Gables, and so I got into that as well. And I was anything and everything.
The redhead thing, right? That's why I loved it. Now, we have another question from Nabila, which is the third question to go with the other two that she asked earlier. This one is quite an interesting one, and it is one that comes up, I think, in our group in different guises all the time. We've all heard of writer's block, but how do we overcome reader's block?
Yeah, that is a really good question, because sometimes sometimes you don't feel like reading, or sometimes you get stuck on the same type of books over and over and over again. I think for kids, it's really important to just give them, it's that variety. It's trying to serve up different books in different ways, even, so that, maybe try an audiobook. If your child is not feeling the love for reading, or you're not feeling the love for reading, try a different way. You listen to an audiobook, try a completely different genre. I always ask for recommendations every time I'm in a bookshop. I do these tours to go and sign books, and I probably buy a book in every single shop that I go into. Yeah. So I always think, support the local authors, support the authors. So I guess variety is key. Listening for recommendations, coming on, Your Kids Next Read. There are always so many good recommendations from other parents and teachers and people who can, steer you in the right direction. So, I think, reader's block is a thing, I guess, too. And for me, I find it hard.
Alison Rushby suggesting graphic novels as well as a way to come through go through it.
That's a good idea as well. So, there's lots of different ways you can try and overcome it.
Imogen's worried about how old Alice Miranda might be in book 20. Is she still going to be 7?
I think no, she's not 7. She's about 11 now, so she's actually grown up quite a lot. And her friends are all sort of getting to the 14 stage, so they've got they're becoming quite the teenagers. So no, she won't be too old, Imogen. She won't. I won't make her like 20 or anything like that.
She's not writing the diary and going to uni just yet. All right, so our last question before the evening. I have saved this one specifically for the end because I know how important this is as a topic of conversation for you. Colleen Dancer has asked us, how do we encourage boys to read books with female heroes, as there seems to be a tendency in a lot to prefer books with male heroes? How do we encourage our boys to read those books that have those fabulous girls in them?
Okay.
Can you hear me? I can't believe you. This moment is here, and now your sound's gone.
No, am I back?
Yeah.
Hopefully, I'm back.
Yes.
Yeah. So, Colleen wants to know, how do we encourage boys to read books with girls as the protagonists? Is that was essentially the question?
That was the question.
I think that we have to make we have to make it okay for boys to read books with girls as the main characters, and make sure that, you know, that they're not made to feel embarrassed because they want to read a book that has a girl on the cover. I mean, it shouldn't even be an issue. In this day and age, it shouldn't even be something that we have to think about, but sadly we do. And so I think, you know, one strategy I saw in a school that I went to, in a boys' school, the librarian actually covered the outside of an Alice Miranda book in a different cover. So I think she actually just wrapped it in brown paper, and boy then said, oh, in the first place. I think, you know, we need to make recommendations for books for books with girls in them for boys to read. And you know, it's interesting because I go to some schools and it's not really an issue for boys. In England, it's not really, it doesn't seem to be a big issue for boys to read books with girls as the main characters. Right. Unfortunately, you know, when I do author talks in schools and I talk about my characters and kids get really excited, and then, you know, I've had some unfortunate situations where, you know, I was at a book signing one day, and a little boy who I had met the previous day at his school, he came racing across the shopping centre, you know, forecourt, and he said, Dad, that's her, that's the lady, I want to buy her book. And the one that he wanted was Alice Miranda to the Rescue, which has Alice Miranda holding a puppy on the front, and it's green cover. And it was the dad who actually said, he actually looked at his son, he said, mate, you don't want to read that, it's got a girl on the cover. And I was just horrified that was his reaction. And I really, you know, I said, but there's so much in this. It's an adventure. It's a mystery. There are boys in the story. So a lot of it is getting through to parents, and, you know, to stop that talk of, you know, oh, you write great books for girls, don't you? Well, no, I just write great books. They're not for girls, they're for everybody. And so it's changing our language and being aware of the language that we use around kids as well. I think that's a big part of it. And as Alison knows, I could go on for days about this topic.
We're actually planning an entire broadcast lecture series on this subject. Right. But as Michelle Nye says, there's only good books, good writers and good writing. So good look for good books, and you know, like, encourage kids to read all sorts of different things. And I think that that's the only way that we're going to make a really significant change in that area. So we've reached the end of our broadcast. We've had all of our questions have been answered. Thank you so much to everyone who has come along this evening to listen to us. Thank you so much, Jacqueline, Harvey, for all of your wonderful insights. Could you maybe tell us now where people can find out more about you and your book? So you've got a website. What's your website address?
Yes, my website is just jacquelineharvey.com.au. You can find me on Twitter. My Twitter handle is capital J Jacqueline, capital HARVE. Leave off the Y because I couldn't fit that into the Twitter handle, apparently. That's also my Instagram, and you can find me on my Facebook fan page as well. But Alison, can I get in one quick plug, because this book has just come out this week, and it's been written especially for Australia Reads. This is the Bargain Basement Kenzie and Max $2.99, but you can see that it's quite a bit skinnier than the rest of the series. So I call this book book number 6A. But it is a complete adventure, and the perfect way to get kids into the series if they haven't read it so far. So, you know, we hope that everybody will pick up a book for the reading hour next Thursday as well. So, and this is a perfect book for the reading hour.
Fantastic. And can people buy your books through links on your website? Or I'm going to put links in the actual post on Your Kids Next Read. But in case people are watching later on, will they be able to find links to buy your books at your website?
Yeah, well, I think I link it to the publisher, and then the publisher has lots of ways that you can buy the books through the publishing website. So, yeah, that's how we do it. At
that point. Fantastic. All right, now before we go, we have one last winner, of course, of the prize, Kenzie and Max Full Speed, and Stacey Elliott is the winner. She has Grace and Ivy with us. With her watching from Yay. Is it Yay or Yee in Victoria?
I think it's Yay.
Grace has been learning to speak Indonesian at full speed today, and Ivy has been full speed at sports at school today. So you guys are the winners of the book. I will put a little comment underneath the post as to how you can go about claiming your prize. And once again, thanks everybody for coming along. It's been such a pleasure. Sorry we've had a couple of little technical hitches, but I'm sure you'll all agree with me that it hasn't taken away anything from the fantastic enjoyment and all of the information that we have received here tonight. So thanks for coming along to Your Kids Next Read, to our author talk. And yeah, we will see you next time. Bye.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.